I'm Steve Delphin. I'm President and CEO of America's Charities, for those of you who joined us a little later. We have with us what I would say the two of the preeminent experts in employee engagement that are out there in the marketplace today. First with us is Chris Jarvis, right here to my right. He's senior partner and co-founder of Realized Worth. They work with companies and other employers to help them motivate employees to participate in volunteering and giving programs. We also have Ryan Scott, who's CEO and founder of CauseCast. They're a firm that provides giving and volunteering technologies, platforms, and solutions that help companies reach the highest level of employee engagement and social impact. Ryan's a successful entrepreneur, humanist, read that off your LinkedIn site, philanthropist, read that off there too, and investor and advisor to many interesting companies and charities. So Chris and Ryan are going to share their real-time experience working with employers who have developed and nurtured a highly engaged workforce through transformative impact of technology, contemporary volunteerism, employee giving, social responsibility. So the format's going to be, they're both going to speak as we've done before with the other panelists. I think, Chris, you're going first, and after they've both made the presentations, we'll open it up to questions, which we hope we have many of.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Our current work with companies, we work with fairly large companies because that's who can afford it. Because everybody else is, no, and even they have these tiny little budgets. So that's who we work with, but combined probably represent currently about just over 2 million employees. And we focus our work on answering the question, why would employees bother to participate in these programs? You can go volunteer wherever you want, when you want. You can give however you want. There are a multitude of platforms. Why would an employee give yet even more of themselves to the company that they're working for? What's in it for them? So most of our companies offer, well, they all offer employee volunteering giving programs, but as you know, of the Fortune 500 companies, 99% offer a workplace giving campaign of some type or support of some type, and 98% offer employee volunteering support. That may not be paid time off, but there's some sort of material contribution to the product, to the process of volunteering that qualifies it to be considered corporate volunteering. However, participation rates, as you also know, because you're on the side that is very affected by participation rates in both those categories, is considerably less, around 30%. By and large across the board. So getting folks to participate in these programs is what we do. But we do it, we don't plan events, and we don't find nonprofits, and we don't organize things. We focus on building capacity at the company, and we focus on supporting the individual employee in being able to go out, find a nonprofit, talk to that nonprofit, create an opportunity, develop a relationship, go back to the company, get 10 or 20 of their colleagues to go do a thing. That thing could be international, that thing could be skill-based, that thing could be painting, that thing could be anything, but it's the individual employee who has the capacity and has the mandate to go out and do that. So out of the 2 million, we'll work directly with about 75,000 employees over the next 2 years, providing training and support. I mean, talking directly to 75,000 employees. 75,000 employees, each employee represents 40, potentially represents 40 unique individual other employees who will participate with them under their leadership in giving or volunteering. So, and we tend to think of that as a lifetime, companies think of lifetime customers, their value over a lifetime. Well, the lifetime of an employee to mobilize their colleagues to get involved is huge. And it usually works out that each person that we work with, it represents, if you do it over a period of time, 3 times the potential capacity that you need to mobilize everybody in the company. So does that make sense? So the people that we work with can mobilize, they only are a small part of 2 million employees, but they actually will be able to mobilize 6 million employees. But there's not 6 million employees at these companies. So we're over-delivering is what I hopefully am saying if we do our job right. Okay, however, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the 5 changes, all right? 5 changes that are happening out there because of the kind of work that we're doing with companies, because of what society wants, and because of the interests of the individual practitioners that we're working with. Okay, so I'm going to give you the 5 changes. These are 5 changes that directly affect you in your role on the nonprofit side of things. So some of this we've already heard about, but the 5 changes required relate to these areas: the role of the nonprofit, the strategy that the company implements, the metrics that they're after, the result that they want to achieve, and the approach that they're using. Okay, so we'll go through these really quickly, and then Ryan's going to get up and provide us even more insight. So, first change, and we've already heard this. Companies are looking for nonprofits that are not primarily about philanthropy, but are much more taking a posture of partner. Okay? Companies are moving away from being a source of philanthropic dollars. Now, companies will always have a CEO on a golf course talking to a buddy, and the buddy's going to say, hey, did you give to the American Diabetes Society? And the CEO's going to go, no, you should totally do that. Okay, fine, I'll call my person. Next thing you know, the American Diabetes Society is a primary focus for the company, right? That's always going to happen. But it is starting to get reined in by practitioners, right? And that will change over a period of time. Now, so what I'm saying is there will always be crazy oversized checks going to philanthropic organizations. But the broader base of support that companies are giving to nonprofits is going to be around partners. Now, as Emily already said, we go looking for you because there's no way to go through all of the calls and the emails to find you looking for us. However, I do want to talk practically about each one of these changes and see what you think of them a little bit, okay? So this one from Philanthropy Partner, if I were you, I'd be sitting there going, no, duh, okay, I knew that, I've heard that for years now, that I know, that's known. In our program, say an individual employee is going out, say Apple, they're one of our clients. So we've got 400 people now, they're called champions. 400 people who are authorized to go out and find a nonprofit to work with, okay? So that'll be up to 2,000 by December of next year. And they'll bring 10 people, like I said, but 10 people with them per quarter to go and do something. So they're looking for someone. So the change that I'm suggesting is less of a organization to big brand and more of an organization to employee. Think of your employee, the employees of the company, as your primary goal, not the brand. They'll bring the brand with them, okay? If you have an employee who's completely sold out, here's who we look for. We call them stage 2 or stage 3 volunteers. They do this 10 to 100 hours a year volunteering. They're out there, they're active in the community. Many of them are active with you already. Do you know what brand, where they work? Okay, so that's the first thing. Do you know where they work? Once you know where they work, begin to think through what does the company that you work for need out of this potential relationship. You almost all have a way into companies already. Forget about Heather. Don't forget. You're never going to get to Heather. Heather is like, she's up on Mount Olympus. You'll never get to her, right? This is what I tell nonprofits. But many PwC employees already work where you're at. If we can partner with the employee to provide them opportunities to bring their coworkers with them, that's the level of partnership I'm talking about. I'm talking about going small to get large, okay? So we always recommend nonprofits look through your list of volunteers, find out where they're working, not just to access the Dollar for Doers money, which is available and many nonprofits don't know about and don't access, but to begin to think of the individual representing the brand, and that's your key partner. So what do they need, and how can you encourage them to bring more employees? Once they're an evangelist on the inside, they're very persuasive, right? They've had success, they're taking people out. Heather loves those people. They're diehard enthusiasts, and she can count on them to mobilize people. They're her primary partners too, right, in making this happen. So they're your key, okay? Number 2, this was supposed to go with, that was supposed to be up while I was talking. So now we can all appreciate the fact that I found that photo.
Just
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Capacity. Okay. We tell companies, forget about events, big events. The only time to think about them is to try and convert people who don't volunteer to volunteer. Okay, we start with volunteers and work our way toward giving. People who volunteer are 5 times as likely to give 5 times as much as people who don't. People who volunteer are also the place where you'll see the return on your investment for a company. So corporate executive board, right? They do just under $1 billion of revenue a year. They're a very large organization. They polled all their members, and they have a lot of members all around the world, trying to figure out what's the ROI of the return on investment of employee volunteering and giving. Okay, giving, it's marginal in terms of what money the company actually achieves for each employee that gives. Volunteering is about $2,400. Okay, averaged across a bunch of different companies and a bunch of different countries, it's $2,400, and that's only from 2 areas. One, retainment, okay, and the second one is productivity. So they have brought in all these scientists and analysts and whatnot, and that's the number, $2,400. For every employee that we get for Apple to go get involved in the community, that's worth $2,400 to the bottom line. Okay. We're also we're augmenting that study with another one with the Government of Canada to see what it looks like in Canada in particular. But yeah, that's the goal. So each person that we can get out to volunteer, that is incredibly important to the company, okay? So the company is much less interested in, let's go all out and clean up a park and have hot dogs and wear t-shirts and go back. They're looking more for capacity rather than somebody to help them plan events. We don't get hired to help them plan events. We get hired to take the individual employee, give them everything they need, and support them on a monthly basis as they go out and find you and take 10 people with them to get out there. And that's what generates revenue for the company out of these kinds of programs, okay? All right. Engagement versus participation. Participation is part of engagement. Engagement is not a part of participation, right? Participation is taking an action, showing up, doing something, right? Some people define participation as looking at something. It's very passive participation. I go on the site, I check it out, I participated. You kind of just looked at something, but okay, in the broadest sense. Engagement is action and sharing. That's what we're after. Each employee that gets out there in the community, if they do not share their experience with a family member, a friend, or a fellow employee, they're not engaged. They just participated. And participation does not get you the $2,400 number. Engagement does. Okay? It's because participating at the level of engagement generates what we call effective commitment. Okay? There are 3 types of commitment: normative commitment, continuance commitment, and effective commitment. Normative is just how you were raised. It's like what's commitment, my dad raised me never to quit my job, so I stayed at jobs a lot longer than I should have. That's normative. Okay, it's what I kind of came with. Continuance is what HR spends billions of dollars on each year. They'll get you that better chair, the corner office, a little bit more money, whatever it takes to get you to a place when another company comes along and says, we got a better job with a little bit more money, you're left with, I don't know, I just got a new chair, right? So I don't know what your chair's like, so I'm going to stay here. I know it's more money, I'm going to stay here. I have friends here. That's continuous commitment. Effective commitment is an emotional bond. Effective commitment is what Microsoft has because they have an outstanding volunteering and matching program. And we have interviewed hundreds of their employees who have told us we get offers from other companies, but I turn them down because I know that company doesn't give me the opportunity to support autism. My child has autism. I'm staying here. That's effective commitment, right? There is a limit. Like if you offer them a certain amount of money, they're like, I'll go, right? I'll just donate the extra money, whatnot. But all things being equal, effective commitment is the best kind of a commitment. And volunteering generates effective commitment. So we'll talk about that. Don't have time because we've got to get up here. Transformation versus transaction. Okay. Transactional volunteering. I'm going to give you a story about this one. Transactional volunteering is you go, you stack a pile of boxes, the nonprofit says thank you, you drive away. You did a good thing. That's great. Transactional volunteering is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It is good. Employee volunteering has to go beyond transactional volunteering to achieve the benefits that it promises because you need engagement and you need to generate effective commitment. So let me paint you a picture. And this is one we use in all our trainings. So this is a true story. I work at Company X, and Bob down the hall has been one of these champions for a couple of years. And Bob and I are friends, work friends, you know what that means. So we're work friends, and Bob comes to me, and he asked me on a very regular basis, about 14 times I think, to go do something with him volunteering. I'm like, I always have a good excuse. I can't, my wife, blah, blah, blah. But this time I didn't have coffee. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was tired. He caught me off guard and I blared out, sure. Oh, nuts. So he says, I'll follow up with an email. This is so great. Bob's very excited. And we're going to be in 2 weeks. And I know I'm going to forget because I don't volunteer. Like most Americans, I do not volunteer on a regular basis. I might do a walk for the cure or something like that every once in a while. If there's a hot dog and a T-shirt, sure. But it's not a practice. So anyway, so I make a note that because in my iPhone, because I don't want to forget. And sure enough, 2 Fridays, my alarm goes off and I'm like, volunteer. Oh, shoot. I got to get up and do that tomorrow. So I set my alarm to get up early. Next day, it's on a Saturday, I get up and I'm thinking, where's the email? Where am I supposed to go? I'm not planning ahead. It's a low priority, believe me. And so I find out where it is and I'm driving. I think I got to go to get a Starbucks because I'm not. So I pull in, I get the Starbucks. There's a line, there's always a line at Starbucks. So anyways, I get there late, I'm late. So I find a parking spot and I walk up and it's called Phoenix something or another, it's youth and it's painting. So I'm dressed in painting clothes, at least I got that right. So I walk up the stairs, knock on the door, and a guy I don't know answers the door, but he's wearing my company's logo, so I know I'm in the right place. So I said, is Bob here? And yeah, come on in, Bob's here. Bob, Chris here. So Bob comes over and says, hey Chris, thanks for coming. Yep, no problem. Here's your T-shirt. I hand him my coffee. He gives me the T-shirt. Put on the T-shirt. Coffee. What should I do? Bob says, well, we're going to be painting all the trim in this house. So there's carpet on the stairs. Do you mind taping the stairs off so we can paint the trim? Yeah, no problem. So I'm taping off that. And then I go and find him. What else should I do? Well, we're washing the windows. So there are a couple of people over there. Just introduce yourselves and wash windows. So I go over there and do that. And this kind of goes on, 20-minute jobs for like 2.5 hours. Around 11:30, I get lunch at noon, so I go and I find Bob. Bob, I got to go. He's like, oh, we were going to stay till noon. Oh, you can't stay? Okay, that's fine. Thanks for coming. No problem. All right. Keep the T-shirt. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. Get my car and I go and have lunch. Okay, that's a typical employee volunteering program, right? By and large. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. That's fine. But what we're after is, in light of this slide, is something a little different. So I work at this company. And Bob has asked me 14 times to go do this thing, and every time I have a good excuse, but this time when he comes up, I haven't had my coffee, or I'm a little sleepy, I don't know what it is, but I say yes, I regret it immediately. And he says, great, he's so excited, Bob. So he says he'll send me an email. I make a note, because I know I'm going to forget, and sure enough, 2 Fridays from now, I do forget. And I see the alarm, and I think, what? Oh, nuts, I have to go do this tomorrow. So I set my alarm, I get up a little late, I'm groggy, I head out the door, and I know I got to get a Starbucks. But there's always a line at Starbucks, so I stand there, and I get there, and I'm late. I find a parking spot. I walk up the door. I knock on the door. A guy I do not know answers the door, but I know I'm at the right place because he's wearing the logo on his shirt. And I say, hey, is Bob here? He says, yes, he is. Bob, Chris is here. So I come in. He hands me the T-shirt. I said, thanks. I said, what should I do? He gives me the coffee back. He says, well, we're painting all the trim, so do you mind taping off the stairs so we don't get paint on the stairs? I say, sure. He says, great. So I go to do that, and he grabs my arm, and he says, but in 20 minutes, we're going to go in the kitchen, and we're going to do a brief. All right, sure, thanks. So I tape off the stairs. In 20 minutes, we'll go in the kitchen. We're standing in the kitchen, and Bob says, thanks, everyone, for coming. There's about 15 of us. He says, we're going to take a minute and just go around and introduce ourselves and where we work in the company. So we all go around. Now I know everybody's name, or at least heard their name. I can't remember names very well. And I say mine. He says, great, thanks for coming. Really appreciate you being here. You all had other things to do today. Pile of to-dos and other priorities, but you took time to be here today for 3 hours, and I cannot thank you enough. Problem? He says, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rules and whatnot, but I'm wondering, we're going to have Jack from Phoenix House here. He's going to talk about why we're doing it, how it matters. So we go through the rules and exits and all that, and then Jack says, listen, I want to add my thanks to Bob's. Really appreciate you being here. It's incredible that you all came. Let me tell you a little bit about this place. Phoenix House is for youth on the street. We have a place downtown. This is an actual place in Halifax. We have a place downtown, and when street youth need a night, they can come and stay with us. But for those who want to get off the street, there's sort of a rigorous program where they can come here, and there's 3 youth and 1 adult. And it's tough. But if you make it into the program, we'll help you get your GED, we'll help you write a resume, get a job, learn basic skills. And you'd be surprised what skills youth don't have who live on the street, like showing up on time, being polite, not cursing at the boss. So we have classes literally for all these things. And so it really matters. And the kids who are here, the youth who are here, and they run anywhere from 16 to 28, they're here, they have to do all the dishes and all their own cooking and mow the lawn and everything, but there's a lot to the upkeep of a house, so we need volunteers to come in and help us with that. Things like repairing the fence and the back deck and painting trim. He said, let me tell you why it matters that the trim's painted. Because the greatest barrier these kids have to success is the belief that they deserve it. They have no sense of dignity. That has been stripped away from them through awful things in their life that drove them to the street, and then while they were on the street, it got worse. So they do not believe that they deserve kindness or dignity, and when they get really close to making a different kind of choice for a different kind of future than they were able to imagine before, they will often self-destruct. So the most important message that we try and tell these kids day after day here at the house is you have value, you're worth it, make a different choice. And when we paint the trim in this place and keep it tidy and lovely and beautiful, we are telling them, have dignity, have dignity. And so every time you paint trim, you put a little bit of white trim on that, please know that you are layering the trim here, not with just paint, but with a message that says you have value, you have dignity. That's what we're doing here today. Thank you so much for coming. So we break up, okay, and we all go, and I'm thinking about painting and communicating this message of dignity. And then before I leave, we have a little debrief, and I'm asked 2 questions with the whole group again. What did you experience, and was it what you expected? Only 3 of us say anything, but I'm thinking about that. And now I leave, it's 12:30, I stayed longer than I meant to. And now I leave, and I go and have lunch, and guess what I talk about? Right. I talk about these kids and things I hadn't thought about before. And then I go home and I talk to my spouse and my kids, and guess what I talk about? And then I see Bob again in the office, a week later, and I tell him I can't make the next week because I got a lot of work to do, but please let me know about other opportunities, at other things. Why? I don't know why. But there was something that happened for me in that moment that asked me to go further than I thought or experienced before, and that was powerful for me. And so I want to see if it happens again. And I'm on the journey of a volunteer. That's what we're about. The transaction of painting is fine. The transformation that can come through painting, of all things, is powerful and life-changing, and it does affect the corporate culture. We fill our companies with a better version of ourselves. And that's why this matters. And you guys are the gatekeepers of that opportunity, that experience. But we have to own it and begin thinking about what are the elements to a volunteering opportunity that bring about transformation as opposed to just a transaction. And it is hard. The biggest issue we have in training our champions is getting on the phone with the right person at the nonprofit and creating space for a 10-minute brief. That is a huge obstacle for us because most nonprofits are just after the transaction with a payout of a check at the end. And none of us are on that track here in this room, but many nonprofits are, and I can say it because I used to be on that side, but that's not where the real value is. Okay, so, and I know I'm way over, Steve, so we will go. Interdependence versus independence. You will see through programs like Impact 2030 that companies are going to start teaming up to do things together. That's coming, right? Over the next 15 years, this will be more of the model that companies are taking, especially larger companies. We can talk more about that later. Impact 2030, happy to tell you about that. This is an initiative to organize companies from around the world to start achieving the global goals, sustainable development goals that are going to be announced in September, through the voluntary efforts of their employees, right? So this is not shared value. This is not building it into the business processes or products of your company. This is how do we enable the individual in neighborhoods where they live and work to make a positive difference, right? And so these are the companies that have already signed on. They'll be, by the end of the year, we're expecting to have 1,000. All right, so it's just in the early stages right now. All right, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the chit-chat, whatever time we have left. Thanks.
Awesome. I'll take that remote.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
Thank you, sir. Awesome. I love listening to you talk, always.
Yeah.
You're fantastic.
Thanks.
So, wonderful. So, does anybody know how much is given through employee volunteering and giving each year and matching? Does anyone know? How much? 4 billion. Okay, I've heard 5 billion. So we're about similar. So good. Both answers are correct. Let's say that. Anyone know what this number is? No, not that. This is the number of dollars that corporations reserve for donation matching that goes unclaimed every year, which represents about $20 billion to nonprofits. And this is the reason that I created CauseCast. I thought there's what is wrong with this system that we've got more than double the money is sitting on the sidelines. And so what we do at CauseCast is we've got we help companies create engagement programs, volunteering and giving programs that really help move the needle for corporate goals, but also achieve nonprofit goals as well. And we do that through a very robust technology platform. One of the things that I thought was missing in the space was really kind of bringing all of the magic that you get from the internet inside of the corporation. The social media, the engagement that people have with each other. And one of the things that I learned is that the biggest reason that people give or volunteer is simply because somebody asks them to. So it's not really the corporation, saying, dictating like we're going to give to United Way, but their coworkers saying, hey, come to this event with me, and kind of leveraging themselves up this ladder of engagement. And so we bring a lot of that, into this platform. You can see there's people's social media icons there. One of the reasons I think that the donation matching isn't being claimed is because people didn't know how much they had left. Like, I don't know if I have $5,000 left or if I have $5 left. So bringing that up into the front was really important. So that's one way that we engage folks. Another way is through a robust story capture mechanism. So if you've got thousands of people out in the community volunteering and giving, you've really got thousands of stories. How does the corporation actually collect all those stories and then disseminate it back to the public, but then also more importantly to the employees themselves? And that required integrating it with mobile. People are out in the community volunteering. What are they doing with the photos that they're taking that day? Are they putting them onto Facebook, or are they giving them back inside the corporation and then putting them out to Facebook? That's the way they should be doing it. So we built that into the system as well. But then on the other side of it, sort of outside of the system, is making large partnerships that can bring many corporations together to work on kind of similar things together. I heard a statistic of only about 5% of giving goes through corporations and matching, and then we've got another $330 billion that go through individuals. Well, what do those go through? A lot of it is going through things like Movember, Giving Tuesday. A lot of these campaigns that we've heard of before, those needed to be brought into the corporation as well, and some companies are already starting to do that. We really encapsulate that into the platform as well, and this is an example of a partnership we did with the White House, where we had, and this was for STEM education, especially for girls. They came to us and said, can you get this campaign out to corporations? And so we built the campaign in our platform and took it to multiple companies, and they participated each in their own different way. But we were able to track it on this campaign layer, and then the White House was able to be a megaphone for it. So the companies got a tremendous amount of value out of this that they wouldn't have gotten if they had just done it themselves. And we're talking about some companies only had 300 people. They were not going to get a big PR benefit from doing a campaign around girls in STEM. They're going to get some benefit from the corporation, but bringing in bigger partners, and we partner with Giving Tuesday and Movember and all these other organizations, allows them to get a heck of a lot more exposure and a lot more excitement inside the company as well. And so what we're seeing is that companies are increasing giving, and I think this is great news, especially in light of the CFC and what's happening there. And we're seeing this not only with individual companies, like for example, Neiman Marcus is one of our clients. When they first started with us, they immediately saw 50% more giving than before, and they thought, and they actually said this, that was easy. So now they started doing disaster response campaigns. Instantly something would happen, they'd respond to it immediately and generate a few $1,000s each time. Then they said, that was easy too. Now we're going to start to do a volunteering program, which was something they were never able to do before with 90 locations. How were they going to manage this process? But the software made it easy enough for them to actually do that. Now that I look at it as kind of an immeasurable, how do you measure how much more that is? It's not like it's doubling or tripling, it's adding something that didn't even exist before. And that's on an individual company basis. But what we're seeing also is because we've built something that's so scalable and very easy to use, and it's not a big custom piece of software for every client, that we're also seeing growth in the number of companies that are doing it. At this point we're seeing, if you look at it, there's about 500 Fortune 500s. Of course, there's exactly 500. But there's about 7 million other businesses, and they all want to do this stuff. even startups. I'm in San Francisco now, and I'm seeing companies that have 10 people say, oh yeah, we really want to do this. That it wouldn't be really possible for them to have done it in the past. And we're seeing just massive growth. We're seeing actually literally about one company a day coming to us saying they want to do this and their new programs. So I think we're going to see a ton more giving going on. So what I want to talk to you about today is how you as an organization can start to leverage this. And there's big companies are going to do it differently than small companies, especially these newer ones that we're seeing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what companies want, how you can give and get more from these relationships, and then what I think the future holds. So first, a little bit about what companies want. Now, I know this is hard to read, so what I did was I actually put it online. But this is what I call the virtuous cycle of employee cause engagement. And it is a cycle, because it feeds back into itself. And the big goal for companies is to increase with employee volunteering and donating. They want to get a lot of different benefits out of this. One of them is this improves their community engagement, which improves their public relations. This also results in increased employee engagement and lengthens retention. That's something that they can measure. It could also, if you do mentoring programs, build an applicant pipeline. Really important. We heard about that earlier. This can increase job candidate interest, so getting more people in. If you're doing the right kind of volunteer opportunities, it can, especially board service is a great example of this. It builds skills and is a type of leadership training. Ultimately, this can lead to improved profitability and higher market cap. We've seen studies showing this, that 30% of a company's market cap is directly related to their standing in the community. And if you're tracking and measuring all this stuff, it results in increased investment in the program, which feeds back into the cycle. And there's more that you could add to this, of course, but this I think gives you a good way of thinking of what companies, how they're thinking about this. And this is what they want. They want ROI. And increasingly, they're going to be demanding it and measuring it internally. So again, I think kind of just the few top pillars, the top lines of this is improved recruiting and retention, as I touched on. Improved communications, not just externally, like through Twitter and Facebook and things like that, but also especially reflecting back to the employees the good that they've done. And even the employees that were not able to participate in it, really increases the value of the internal communications. And as I touched on earlier, skills building and leadership development. So how can you as an organization start to leverage this? And again, with some of the smaller companies, they're at such a preliminary sophistication level that some of the things I'm going to say are kind of it's a little bit obvious. But except for this one, it's creating a progression of opportunities. So you've got really these kind of entry-level things, and they're good to have, and it's very important. And that's going to be the base level that's going to get some folks to start to participate. But what do they do after that? What do they do after they've painted that room in your office? And don't make them paint that room, but what do they do after they've built the house? Is there something more in depth that they can get into? And I think board service is so much higher than that. You're not going to get people going from painting to jumping to board service. But are there things that you can create in the middle that help folks get more involved and more engaged? And I think there's an interesting trend starting now too, and some of this existed in prep schools, but it's now being brought into the corporations, the idea of a junior board, where you don't have to make an enormous financial commitment, but you still get to participate in the board. Maybe you help them do fundraisers. That's something that we're starting to get involved with at CauseCast. So that's one really important thing to do. The other thing is to learn how to tell good stories. And companies will do some storytelling on their own, but to jumpstart them, I think it's really important when a company volunteers or gives you to be able to tell stories of impact and reflect that back to the company and do it through public channels. And they will be compelled to start to spread that word as well. They don't always know the impact. They're not always told what it is, and I think it's really important for you as an organization to learn how to tell good stories. And the reason I have Billion Plus Change up there, this is an initiative of Points of Light Foundation. They exist to tell stories about service, especially around skills-based volunteering. And so I think they're a good example, they're a good place to go to find out how it really just, you can just kind of use them as a template. Taking photos. Again, companies will do this if they remember, and obviously then they should deputize somebody in the company to do it, but just in case they don't, take your own, and then you can get photos of everybody. And again, share it everywhere, especially back with the company and out into social media. And again, this seems very simple, but a lot of the companies coming on board are not thinking to do these things, and we want to get them really excited about this. And that really shows them an ROI right away. They think, and they're not wrong about this, but seeing something on Twitter, they can see that, oh, look, our employee tweeted about us, or this organization tweeted about us, and the employee pushed it out again, that's a real thing we can point to. So here's what I think the future holds for this space. I mean, the tools and the services are going to continue to improve, and I think we're seeing a lot of that here today, the evolution of the space and the kind of services that you're providing at America's Charities, along with the tools that we're able to provide, are going to really help move the space forward. But companies are going to continue to expect more out of these relationships, and I think it's quite possible for you to do it without overwhelming yourself. And organizations are going to continue to give more value and get a lot more in return, and I think we're going to be able to start to get at a lot of that money that's left on the table. As a result of this, relationships are going to really start to deepen, and companies and organizations are going to consider each other true partners, which we've talked about tons today. And so, in summary, I think the company's main goal is improving recruiting and retention, the main one that they can actually, measure. That's the one they always come to us about. Like, we can't hire people, we can't find these. Millennials will not come to us because they don't think, they think we're a corporate good guy, and we need to really show that. You can really start to leverage these new tools to compile and share your great stories. It's really important. And then deepen these relationships. And I think the future is all about building trust, and you're going to have a lot of deep, long-term relationships with these companies. So thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry, I wanted to mention one other thing if I could. There's a webinar about this, and I know I went through this quite quickly, but about some of the things that I was talking about, but specifically how the CauseCast platform, how you can actually use it to do this stuff, and the URL is right there on the bottom.
Well, thank you. Fantastic. I know we're running right up against the scheduled time for lunch, but I want to keep us here for a few minutes so we can ask some questions. This is a great build on the first session we just heard. It goes a little deeper into some of the specifics, but I can also imagine from the perspective of the charities in the room where you're sitting. Again, it's how do you act against this knowledge? How do you act against what you've heard here? I'm looking at my notes, and I look at, the idea of mid-sized companies. This is Chris and Ryan, we've talked about this. So how does a small nonprofit or a national nonprofit actually engage with mid-cap companies? So that's a question I have, but really this is open for you guys. Any questions from the audience before we get the list of questions I might have? Yes. Yeah, that's okay. Here we go. We got microphones flying at you from every direction. Let us know who you are and what organization.
Willemijn Keizer, Southern Poverty Law Center. Not every nonprofit business model calls for the use of volunteers within the organization. And how can nonprofits like that still work with companies and really engage with companies in some of the ways that you were talking about for some of the goals that you were talking about?
That's a really great question. We've had organizations, some surprising ones, and I won't mention, but very national organizations coming to us and saying, can we use your platform to, we're finding that we're losing out on money that we were getting from grants before or just employee giving campaigns, and we realize that we have to create volunteer opportunities. Again, I don't think this is necessarily going to work for everybody, but I will say that this is what the companies want, and it's an important touch point so that they start to get a trust level and a good feeling about your organization. Much as Chris talked about, the two differences in stories are fantastic, and having no interaction with your organization, it's going to be very tough to get other people to and really kind of grow your slice of the pie, while at the same time it's shrinking through the CFC and things like that. So I don't know that I have a great answer for that, but I'm telling you that some organizations who you wouldn't expect to have volunteer opportunities are thinking of ways to engage employees in where it may not feel like a volunteer opportunity. It could be education around. I'll make one up. Well, it's like Red Cross. And they do have volunteer opportunities, but it's things that are not necessarily feel like volunteer opportunities, where they're coming and training your company how to be ready for disasters. That's a benefit to the company, but it gives you a touch point with the organization, and then people are like, oh, I like that organization, I'm going to give them a donation.
Well, it's actually a program of Red Cross, but I'll take it. In my previous life at Booz Allen, we actually were dealing with a lot of these things very early on, and found that our engagement with nonprofits was very much kind of transactional. And we actually went out and did seminars for nonprofits. To your question, how can you better leverage the resources that we have to meet needs that you have that aren't traditional volunteer needs? So what's your organization again?
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Okay, Southern Poverty Law Center. So I would imagine you probably have a whole cadre of pro bono lawyers that you might lean on for, which is basically volunteer engagement. So thinking, beyond that, how do you then activate that group and their networks through social media? and through the platform. So, I know a little bit about you guys from other worlds I'm in. Do you need pro bono assistance? What we used to do is, at Booz Allen, we would look to our charitable partners. Instead of providing legions of volunteers, we would say, are you trying to go through some kind of, or you have an organizational issue, a transformational type of issue that you're dealing with, either organizational structure, organizational design, and literally come in with significant, massive resources at a very high level to do an engagement. It would cost you millions of dollars that we would do for free, which then attaches you very closely to the leadership of the organization. So that's some other ways that are non-traditional. Other questions?
I have a question. Chris, Ryan, this on? Can you hear me? I have a question.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. We're talking about transformational volunteerism. And one of the things that I think people may struggle with is this question of skills giving and thinking about it differently. Talk a little bit about how, because I'm now looking at it as it's the gateway to a fully sustained relationship, that ultimately when you get involved you give money, because money is an essential ingredient to this whole equation. So I wonder if you might address that.
Address which part specifically, Lynn?
All the above. No, the part about how to think about engaging through volunteerism and skills giving that can lead to that sustained relationship and leads to people actually donating money as well.
That always happens. Yeah, there's if people have a positive experience with the organization in a way that's not so I went and stacked boxes and then I just did my thing and then we're even, Stephen. But if they receive education, an experience, it's provocative, anything like that, that almost always tends to elicit support when it's clearly asked for as well. So
This may sound like a small thing, but on the technology standpoint, actually at the moment when somebody is most inspired is the moment that you get them to do things. And so having the ability on mobile to make a donation, I think is really key.
Yep.
And taking all the friction out of it.
Yep. Yes.
More questions? Right here. There.
I think both your panel and the panel before was talking about that it's not always helpful for us to contact you, that you'll find us. What do we need to do to have you find us? Because a lot of the programs we're talking about, STEM, science for girls and things like that, we have those programs and we have very large presence in the DC area. How do you find us? What do we need to do to make that happen?
That's a great question. So part of it, and I'm not sure if the link that I had up there links it, but if you go to CauseCast for Nonprofits, I think it'll have a link to the webinar. We're trying to gather always information about what organizations are doing. So we want to know about these programs, because then when we do campaigns or companies come to us and ask us, hey, we've got these developers and I think they would love to do something that instead of painting murals, they would love to teach people software development, then we'll know that you have that. And another side of that too is we know events that are coming up, because again we're putting on kind of large multi-company campaigns, and then we'll reach out to organizations through the CauseCast for Nonprofits to find what's in the space. So we're because of CauseCast for Nonprofits, that's our kind of our sister site that's specifically for nonprofits. So we're trying to really build this conduit of information so that we know everything that's going on, because the companies don't, and now you're going to have to contact hundreds of them now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a role that America's
Charities,
Yes.
yeah.
is playing
Okay,
for
good.
you and can do more of as well. So it's part of being a member of the organization. And one of our strategies, as Steve referenced earlier today, is to increase the connectivity of our members to private sector giving campaigns.
Yeah, and let me just build on it, since we got the chance and it's relevant. I mean, part of that is the new website we've created. So what we're trying to do, and you'll hear more and more from us about this, is we need for you to be sharing your impact stories with us, either in print or with video, and many of you do that already, because what we then do is we repackage that, and we work with the companies that we run the campaigns to do that. We work with people like Ryan to do that. So part, the amplification of what you do through our contacts with the hundreds of companies and public sector campaigns we work with. This will take time, but this is where it's all going. It's going to the entire networking of information, kind of what we call the democratization of information. Everything that you do is probably out there, so our job is to help aggregate that and get it into the people's hands who are looking for it. So that's a job that we're increasingly doing on your behalf.
That's super exciting.
Yes, right here. I already know. This is Thurgood Marshall Fund. We've already talked.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a question for you, Ryan. So you talked about the mobile giving platform. So when I came onto the organization last year, it was right before our big event, we had this powerful moment, 1,500 people in the room, 2 first-generation college students talking. I mean, it was the LL Cool J's our host. He comes up, he's crying.
Wow.
And that's like the kill shot, you know,
That's
for
amazing.
every nonprofit where you're like, boom, the money goes. And the platform that they had chosen died. And
Oh, that's a problem.
you know, it was like, and because that's the, you know, so what's the best that you've seen for a nonprofit, for a mobile giving platform?
Oh, I know. Yes, you're talking specifically about text to give.
Text to give, but using technology. So
Yes.
at an event, yeah.
That's a good question. We worked with a company in the past and decided to stop working with them. So I can't tell you that there's anything that's awesome for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But there will be at some point, and there's surrogate technology you can use for that. So, you know, if you're creating a platform, and if you know you're going to have that kill shot moment, or you think you will, there are a number of the technology platforms, I would suggest even Causecast, that if you build it into the event and you get the app out to people so that they know that's where they go, you can utilize just about any of the technology platforms to meet that need. It's more of a strategic planning and preparation issue than it is anything else.
We can't have it fail this year because Tim Cook's
Right.
there and Apple's our title sponsor.
Gotcha.
So
Got it.
it has to be good.
Yeah. Well, technology's not perfect, but it usually works
No, I have to
better
make a
than that.
distinction. We very much are a
Yeah.
corporate giving tool and support
Yeah.
organizations and don't actually have that technology. I wish I did, but we don't. Yeah.
Okay. Good takeaway. Yes, right here.
Hi, I'm Serena from Rebuilding Together Alexandria. And I guess my question goes more so along the lines of engagement and participation along with transformation and transaction. Our issue basically is we have a steady flow of volunteers constantly. The issue is that we're not able to use all of them. So how would you recommend that we continue to keep them engaged by spreading word of mouth? Hey, you should volunteer with them versus, hey, they can't use volunteers.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a good question. So on my side of things, when I was organizing volunteers coming to, this is in Indianapolis, a men's mission, we started with a small group. And most of us know how to make things very efficient. So you can have, 4 people handing out the corn and whatever, and you can feed 150 guys, right? They're in a line, takes a long time. So we decided we had to be inefficient in order to give more space for people. So we invited all the guys to sit down, and then we had the volunteers line up to get the food, to take it to people, and you carried salt, and you carried pepper. You could carry salt and pepper, I know it. But
Don't let me. Yeah.
Steve, because he's middle class, needs something to do because his value is based on productivity, right? We all base our personal value on was I needed, did I do something, right? And until you learn what the cause, the community, and the issues are, until Steve gets to a place where he can sit down across from somebody and have a conversation, because that is your highest level of contribution, being present with someone. Steve, first time in, Steve's not going to understand that. So I got to give him a pepper shaker and walk around next to Ryan and say, do you want some pepper? It's ridiculous. But you wouldn't believe, everybody has something to do. You carry the juice, I carry the cups. Everybody has something to do. We all make a contribution. And that is what we advise our folks to do, is figure out how to be as inefficient as possible to create opportunities for everybody.
That's not only is that true, it works, but there's also another piece to this, which is, and we've heard this term, and we've heard people talk about it in the sessions today, is partnerships and collaboration. We are seeing it on the for-profit side. I mean, the idea of partnering, competitors partnering for collective impact, is something we've been talking about for years, and is actually starting to happen. It should happen on the nonprofit side too. So when you're doing what Rebuilding does, and I know what you do, your member agency, and we funded you at Booz Allen. I've been out and I've done the rebuilds and the housing. I always thought every one of those families needs to be connected to other resources. So what is it that Rebuilding is doing to build partnerships with the other pieces of the solution for the families you're trying to reach? Is it a wider circle? I don't know if you're familiar with a wider circle, but your families are going to be families who are going to be struggling economically or health-wise. And what other services do they need, and who else in the nonprofit sector can help do that? How do you bring them to that table and extend that volunteerism not only to yourself but through to the other charities and do that in a partnership?